Part 12. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 111. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. The normal opening of Inuyasha should be that after the dog monster stole the Jade of the Four Souls, he entered into love and murder mode with the Maiko Kikyo. As a result, he was nailed to a tree by Kikyo with an arrow and sealed for 50 years until Kikyo's reincarnation. Wei, with the Jade of Four Souls, traveled back from 500 years later and unlocked the seal of the dog. The normal direction of the story should start with the first encounter between the time-traveling girl and the dog monster. However, Makoto Takahashi does not plan to start drawing according to this. In order to open the prelude to the Age of Monsters, the beginning of Inuyasha must lay the groundwork. Although at this stage, there are no plans to use quick attack magic super fusion, but if you use normal fusion, it should not is it a foul. So at the beginning of the Inuyasha manga, there were the handsome big monster Inushogun with 3 swords on his waist, and the handsome looking but evil looking rogue monster Kudu. The story started with 2 handsome monsters having a drink. General Inu appears as the general who commands the monsters of the Western Kingdom, but Huaxiao has not yet become the master of demons and monsters, he is just a wandering monster. Originally, according to the law of the jungle among monsters, when monsters meet, they will usually fight fiercely and fight to the death. However, these 2 monsters did not fight, but sat together, laughing and drinking at each other boldly. As the beginning of the monster era, unlike the rough beginning of Inuyasha in the previous life, Takahashi Makoto was very meticulous from the beginning when painting. Although it may take more time to draw like this, but in Takahashi Makoto's view, it's very worth it. The content of the first episode of Inuyasha, except for the accident of a certain rogue monster, changed into the beginning of the theatrical version of the domineering sword of the world, which is what happened before Inuyasha was born. After General Dog and Hualao drank and said goodbye, they started a fierce battle with the Dragon Bone Spirit and successfully sealed the Dragon Bone Spirit. However, Makoto Takahashi did not draw the battle between the Inu Admiral and the Dragon Bone Demon, he just briefly touched on it. After the seriously injured Inu Admiral taught his son Sesshomaru the last lesson in the life of a monster, he came to his human wife Princess Izayoi. Although Izayoi was brought back from the brink of death with his natural teeth that could kill evil spirits in the underworld, this also worsened Inu Admiral's injuries. After Inuyashang named his second son Inuyasha, in order to protect Princess Izayoi, he died together with the bodyguard Setsuna Tenmaru, who loved the princess but hated monsters, and was buried in a sea of fire. Is this the very important person you are talking about? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a black look on his face after reading the first episode after the revision. Although he had gradually become accustomed to Makoto Takahashi's deceptive behavior, this time Yoshida, I can't help it. Are you kidding me? Don't you say that this role is very important? Since it is a very important role, why do you get lunch as soon as you appear? And I really want to know, according to the settings in your comics, isn't General Inu very important? Is it amazing? Why do we both die together in the end when our opponent is just a human being? Not to mention the heroes who just left the novice village, even incompetent monsters like slimes can kill the seriously injured Demon King. Besides, General Inu is just the leader of monsters after all. Makoto Takahashi looked contemptuous. Looking at Yoshida, as I told you before, human beings are slowly becoming stronger, and the death of the Inu general is a good proof. My beloved is a cat, don't you see it? Regardless of monsters, no matter how powerful he is, there will be times when he will be destroyed. Even the general of the monsters in the Western Kingdom cannot escape this fate. Although the era of monsters is dominated by monsters, we cannot ignore the existence of weak humans. Only an existence outside the scope of the great demon king of the sixth heaven can enjoy eternal blessings and live as long as the heavens. Hey! Although Yoshida nodded in agreement, The tone of his words was a typical example of perfunctory. As if aware of the cold gaze of Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida immediately changed the topic. Well, as for the content of the remaining 2 chapters, don't look at me with such hostile eyes. At least 3 chapters must be submitted to the serialization meeting content. This is the rule of Shonen Jump. Even if you are a cartoonist in the serialization, there is no exception. So I told you before, if you want to submit for serialization, you must draw 3 chapters first. Content, storyboards are also fine. My beloved is a cat. Those who abide by the rules are called citizens, those who make the rules are called ministers, and those who break the rules are called kings. You are indeed a boring commoner. Makoto Takahashi handed Yoshida into his hands. He grabbed the comics and rolled them into a circle to build a new treasure. Filled with rage, I am the unparalleled Demon King, and the Phoenix Academy is so ferocious. Do you want to restrain me with the power of mere rules? Humph. I want to. You are 100 years too early to resist the Demon King. Take the initiative and activate the second force of madness. Ding Chun, Li Yulai, attack with the whole army. This is. Yoshida looked at the scroll on the black cat and white dog, and it looked very familiar. The black cat is named Li Yulai, a lower-level dark demon, with the 33rd outer seal, and belongs to the chaotic neutral camp. The white dog is named Ding Chun, a lower-level abyss demon, with the 7 deadly sins, and belongs to the chaotic good camp. Takahashi Makoto stood between the black cat and the white dog, holding the new treasure in both hands, with a serious look on his face. The Demon King is named Hau'er Kyoma, the supreme commander of the demon army, holding the anti-world treasure Mingkong Zhanchang sword, and now disguised as a cartoonist. Because the Demon King is so powerful, his madness cannot be suppressed by himself, so his camp is unknown. The 3 demon leaders, come on now. Meow. Woof. Oh. Is this the storyboard you completed? Ignoring Takahashi Makoto's self-proclaimed handsomeness and madness, Yoshida took 2 scrolls from the black cat and dog, opened them, and saw that they were empty, nothing inside. No. Ah-Cheng, you haven't finished it yet, have you? Can't you see it? My cat, if you want to see the truth hidden behind the barrier, in addition to taking the forbidden drug, you can also use the word spirit technique. Takahashi Makoto was not angry because of Yoshida's ignorance. He reached out to take off the eye mask on his left face and put his hands together. The existence hidden in the torrent of the world, the opening of the monster era requires your blood, your soul, and sacrifices your blood and flesh to bind the soul in the abyss that cannot be liberated. Ha! Yoshida sat next to him and yawned, watching Takahashi Makoto jumping up and down and chanting spells boredly. This is Yoshida's latest entertainment project, watching a middle school student build a delusional world. Here, my summons, open, the existence hidden in the darkness. 10 minutes later, Takahashi Makoto finally finished chanting the spell, and Yoshida on the side was shaking his head and gradually went to the stage of sleeping to replenish magic. The secret technique of the dog monster that has never been passed down from generation to generation. Takahashi Makoto suddenly shouted loudly, making Yoshida feel the danger, but because he had just escaped from the hypnosis of the god of sleep, his body did not react in time, and was successfully hit by Takahashi Makoto. Remember this move with your body and soul. It was a total of 7 combos, not like a certain exposed girl swinging a wire combo, but at a very fast speed, performing 7 uninterrupted attacks, without making any sound during the attack, not like the da roaring like a bursting man, nor like the ola ola of the pressure momentum assistance like a stand user, but like a squinting sword fox performing Emerald Heart. After performing a strong impact, it kept making a sound similar to the sound of the wind. Because this is the mystery of the wind attribute, it is fast, sharp, agile, and gorgeous. When Yoshida reacted, the pain from his back told him that the incident of being knocked away and sliding down the wall really happened. This move is called Kongo Bakuryo Mingdeo Zanjio Ippo. With this strike, I can command the heroes. Who in the world can compete with me? Takahashi Makoto slowly put down the weapon in his hand, and the comic manuscript rolled into a double sword slowly flattened, losing its previous brutal ability. Have you seen it? My cat, whose soul was almost dragged into the underworld. Takahashi Makoto, do you want to kill me? Yoshida roared angrily, and the black cat and white dog were hit by the piercing sound attack superimposed by Yoshida's miserable roar, and the effect was outstanding, and they lost their ability to fight. Ahem, I never thought you could actually hurt me. Takahashi Makoto covered his chest and looked at Yoshida with a pale face. After receiving such a heavy blow, you still have the energy to launch such a sharp counterattack. My cat, you have been hiding your strength before. Stop it, a sentence should be said twice. Yoshida has fallen into a state of rage. He took advantage of Takahashi Makoto's stiff state after performing the ultimate move and started to attack with his mouth. Where is the agreed storyboard? What happened to that attack just now? Because of your matter, I haven't had a good rest recently. Is it necessary to take a nap like this? What hatred do I have with you? I'm talking to you. Yoshida has a barrier, and the infinitely cruel mouth cannon is activated, and Takahashi Makoto is infinitely dizzy. My cat, you are cheating, right? You must be cheating. Half an hour later, Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida in disbelief. Why can you use such a trick of infinite dizziness? This kind of thing is impossible for a person with such good character to happen, it must be cheating. Be quiet, Yoshida glared at Takahashi Makoto coldly, and then continued to look down at the storyboard of the comics, and the anger on his face gradually disappeared. Tisk. My cat, don't be so proud. Takahashi Makoto turned his head away and spit, complaining unhappily, if I hadn't been using cheats for the past few days and overdrawn my magic and physical strength, I could beat 10 combat idiots like you. Although Yoshida didn't say anything, his expression eased a lot. The reason why his attitude began to change was entirely because of the things in his hands. The second episode was a comic draft, and the third episode was a storyboard. To be honest, Yoshida didn't expect Takahashi Makoto to complete all 3 episodes at the beginning, he just said it, but now looking at the comic draft and storyboard in his hand, Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto, who looked a little tired, and a hint of worry appeared on his face. Ah Cheng, this guy, has been staying up late again, right? Aiken, this monster called Huapiao. Yoshida was a little confused. Why did this character only appear once? Why did Aiken say it was a very important character? Yoshida, who was full of doubts, raised his head to ask, but saw Takahashi Makoto who had closed his eyes and fell asleep. He shook his head helplessly. Aiken, this guy is really. Thank you for your hard work, Aiken. Have a good rest. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao SD Mao. Chapter 112. Cheng, I think about this conversation. Yoshida couldn't finish his words halfway, because Takahashi Cheng opposite him closed his eyes again and fell into sleep. Hey, Cheng, don't sleep. Wake up quickly. Huh, Makoto Takahashi reluctantly opened his eyes, looked at Yoshida with some confusion, and said vaguely, are there any new intruders? Activate the third barrier to defend, the fourth barrier to counterattack, and then. Cheng, I think what you need now is to have a good rest. Yoshida looked at the sleepy Takahashi Makoto and sighed helplessly. Although you did draw these 3 comics at the same time, but how long can this state last? So serializing 3 comics at the same time is simply not something that humans can do. As for comics, that's it for today's comics discussion. Hey. You really know how to choose the right time. Makoto Takahashi squinted his right eye and looked at his palm solemnly. Under Yoshida's doubtful eyes, Makoto Takahashi covered his left eye, full of strong reluctance. He murmured, the restraining seal, because the weakness began to disappear. Has it finally come to this time? It seems that there is not much time left for me. At times like this, I'm surprisingly energetic. Yoshida spread his hands helplessly. Yoshida has become accustomed to Takahashi Makoto's Tsuyuni delusions unfolding. But thinking about Makoto Takahashi staying up late to draw, Yoshida will naturally not forget to remind Makoto Takahashi to pay attention to his health. Chen, although comics are very important, you should also consider your own health. Staying up late at night to draw or something is not good for your health. My beloved cat, I have already said that there is not much time left for me. Is it still time to worry about your health? You really don't know the importance. Regarding Yoshida's perfunctory attitude, this time Makoto Takahashi looked very angry. Can't you feel it? The calls to me from other worlds are becoming more and more frequent. Maybe this is the last time we communicate. Oops, I can already smell it. Holy, the disgusting smell on Angel's body. Well, there's also this familiar smell. Did you even start to hallucinate because of lack of sleep? Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi helplessly, stood up, and prepared to leave. Damn it, the pursuers came so fast this time. There is no mistake, the person coming this time is His Highness the Tyrant of the Time and Space Administration. Hey, when the seal breaks out, he really knows how to choose the day. No, it must have been investigated before, so it was chosen at this time. Makoto Takahashi suddenly became extremely impatient. After talking to himself for a long time, he looked at Yoshida seriously. My beloved cat, this is the last time we talk. If you don't see me on the promised day, then you must inherit my last wish, not to become Hokage, nor to become the Pirate King, but to become Lord Kami of the New World. The successor of Phoenix Academy, the next general of Hokuto Kenshin Ryu, is determined to be you. From now on, you must fight like a man. Makoto Takahashi, who was in a messy and open state in his second year, said some incomprehensible words with a pale face, and left in a hurry. Looking at the retreating back of Makoto Takahashi, Yoshida shook his head helplessly. Could it be that due to lack of sleep, Shuyunibu will evolve into paranoia of being persecuted? But speaking of this conversation, Yoshida felt extremely familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. 3 days later, it was estimated that Makoto Takahashi had almost rested, and since he had to collect manga manuscripts, Yoshida came to Makoto Takahashi's house, and then saw his assistants gathered around the door of Makoto Takahashi's house, but did not go in. Good morning. Why don't you go in? Yoshida looked at the closed door with some doubts and called out loudly, Chen, are you there? Chen, damn it, are you asleep? In that case, open in spring. Alibaba used the spell Open Sesame to open the door to the treasure house and successfully gained wealth and girls. The incantation Yoshida recited today also opened the door, but it was not Takahashi Makoto's house, but the resident next door, which is the studio of manga artist Ajuma Menha. It wasn't anyone who opened the door, but Ding Haru, who kept wagging his tail. Ding-chun, you are really... Lan Dai stretched out his head in surprise, looked at the large number of people gathered at the door, and said hello with some embarrassment. Well, hello, Mr. Yoshida. Second grade, Ah Cheng has something to do. It is suspected that a hidden plot has been triggered. Although he could not hear the prompt from the Supreme God, Yoshida, who was full of doubts, led a small group of assistants, and everyone entered the Yachen Mu Menjai copy, and decided to accept the side hidden mission. By the way, the key point that triggers the mission is the existence named Ding Chun. 2 nights ago, Aiken suddenly came to us with Ding Chun and Liulai in his arms. He said he wanted to escape pursuit, travel to another world for a while, and asked us to take care of his pets. Lan Dai, as a qualified the leader, naturally had to narrate the entire process of the task, and the black cat and white dog mentioned were yawning lazily and lying in the corpse in front of the yellow-haired glasses gentleman. Escape from pursuit, travel to another world for a period of time. The more Yoshida listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. His head was covered with black lines, and his body began to exude black energy. This was a precursor to a demonic change. That middle-class bastard, this is. Aiken said, you'll understand when you see this. Landai handed an envelope to Yoshida with a look of sympathy on his face. As for the content of the letter, Yachin Mumanjai and the two knew it, because the letter was completed here. That signature, Mr. Yoshida will definitely be angry, right? After Landai and the yellow-haired glasses man exchanged a look, they looked at Yoshida with some expectation. Because the number of summons from another world has been very frequent recently, and I feel the arrival of the space-time administration, I need to go to another world to find reinforcements. My beloved cat, please be careful to hide your whereabouts recently. Don't let those guys discover the relationship between us otherwise death will be waiting for you. As expected, Yoshida's face turned livid, and as he continued to watch, Yoshida became extremely angry. By the way, because when you arrive in another world to become an Aotean, you must bring an auspicious, magical beast that can transform into a human form, so the little sea otter has been taken away by me. Don't think about it. Peace of mind, wait for me to unify the other world and establish after a harmonious and loving crystal palace. I will make a triumphant return with the little sea otter, Xiao Yuanshan's masterpiece. After Yoshida read Makoto Takahashi's message, he immediately took out his cell phone and dialed little sea otter's number, but the phone indicated that it was turned off. Yoshida tried hard to calm down the urge to throw the phone, and called Makoto Takahashi instead. Although he also knew that the chance of Makoto Takahashi answering the phone was close to zero, the angry Yoshida had completely ignored it. Hey, my beloved cat, what do you mean by summoning the Demon King? Are you really found and being hunted? Hey. As a cannon fodder that delays time, it's really useless, Takahashi SEI answered. The phone call was beyond Yoshida's expectations. As for the ridicule, Yoshida has completely changed his job and become a berserker who has lost his mind. Takahashi Makoto, where are you now? Yoshida asked through gritted teeth. Everyone felt the strong murderous intention and anger. Sensing the strong aura of blackening, the black cat and white dog looked at Yoshida alertly and made a posture ready to attack. Now I'm on the flower and fruit mountain in ALA country, drinking with a cute monkey monster named Monkey King. Makoto Takahashi seemed to have predicted Yoshida's next step and made an evasion in advance. The little sea otter is also talking here. I just updated his equipment, now he should be happily playing the Frozen Frog game with some idiot blue-haired Lolita, right? ALA National Flower and Fruit Mountain, don't think I haven't seen it. The corners of Yoshida's mouth kept twitching, and the people around him who heard the conversation had strange looks on their faces. This place name is really, Yoshida Kui. He was choked and vomited blood. Takahashi Makoto, where exactly are you? Humph, does a mere mortal want to travel to another world? The interstellar coordinates are. Makoto Takahashi snorted, and after announcing a long list of strange words, he sneered, are you satisfied? I'll tell you the specific coordinates as well. Well, as for how to come, that's up to you. In about a week, no, if I sleep with 10 princesses every day, I will be back in 2 weeks. Who would go to a place like that? After Yoshida unconsciously complained, although his anger decreased, it actually changed quantitatively. Then what about the serialized comics? Do you want to suspend publication or discontinue updates in 2 weeks? By the way, I remember someone said before that it is a man's romance to keep publishing. Humph. My familiar cat, you underestimate the so-called plug-ins. Makoto Takahashi proudly showed off, I have completed the 2 weeks of manga manuscripts. As before, it was sealed in the barrier, go and find it yourself. You stupid beloved cat, don't rely too much on me. This dependence will one day turn into unforgettable hatred. Is Hiramarukun really on your side? Yoshida's tone was full of doubt. Can you let me have a few words with him? I've obviously told you the coordinates. Just wait. Listening to Takahashi Makoto's words, Yoshida showed a smile. As long as he can talk to Hamaru-kun, he can find out where the two of them are. Yoshida have this confidence. Although I was a little confused as to why Makoto Takahashi didn't notice it, it doesn't matter now. That's really bad. Second miss, stop playing with him. After all, the little sea otter is just a mortal bone and will be ruined by you. Next time I will bring my cat to play with you. Cats have 9 lives. Even if you cultivate into a human form. Ah, is it too late? Unscrupulous Hungbei, come out to save people, I have a lot of money here. While Takahashi Makoto shouted loudly, the phone was hung up. Yoshida learned a new lesson. Anyone who underestimates the intelligence of Shuyonibu will get the retribution of being teased. Hey! This time is really. After Takahashi Cheng hung up the phone, he walked behind the girl who was in a daze, put his hands around her waist and hugged the girl, the devil's secret technique for targeting princesses, ha! Kill the girl in his arms. Makoto-kun, Rina was suddenly hugged by Takahashi Makoto, her face turned crimson, and she struggled shyly, trying to break away from the evil clutches of the Demon King, but with this level of power, if you want to resist His Majesty the Demon King, you are 100 years too early. Takahashi Makoto ignored the eyes of the people around him and picked up Rina horizontally. Give up your resistance. No princess can defend against this. The ultimate trick, princess hug. Ha 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 ha. I'm so envious, Mr. Feng Guangai Yuan is really the god of the new world. Little Otter blinked his eyes enviously. Because he was drunk, he pulled the man next to him and started to complain, I'm already? You're already dead. Ogata Ag looked at Little Otter coldly with a dark face. Sorry, I was busy cleaning today and the update was a little late. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 113. Vienna Music City is similar to the urban structure of a certain college. More than 90% of the residents are urban students. However, there is no superpower research institute here. It is just a gathering place for music lovers. It is the holy place in the heart of every musician. Domain. Going abroad is equivalent to traveling to a different world. This is the calculation formula in Makoto Takahashi's mind. Yoshida, who stayed in front of Makoto Takahashi's house every day, never expected that Makoto Takahashi would actually leave Dongjo with the little sea otter and come to Vienna Music City. Although saying I didn't come to the Vienna Conservatory of Music just to see you at this time can increase the level of arrogance. Makoto Takahashi turned his head, not daring to look directly at the expectant Rina, and curled his lips to explain himself. The reason here is, but because the devil's nature is not compatible with tsundere, the fact is, because of the lack of some materials for the construction of the monster era, that's why I came here. Hee, Makoto-kun is really. Rina had a smile on her face and was about to say something when she was interrupted by Ogata Ag. Then you go back early. Ogata Ag took a sip of coffee and looked at Makoto Takahashi with a frown. If you don't want to come, don't come in the first place. You are really annoying as always, kid. Ahaha, stop serializing comics, don't have to work every day, and can play unscrupulously. This is the life I yearn for. The little sea otter's face was full of excitement, and his eyes swept around without scruples, targeting the passing female students. And there are so many beauties here, Lord Phoenix Academy, it's exactly what you said before. No worries about work, no oppression from the demon Yoshida clan, I'm so happy. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Oh. Just have fun, little sea otter-kun. Makoto Takahashi raised the corners of his mouth slightly, with a bad smile on his face. Seeing the little sea otter getting carried away with joy, Makoto Takahashi maliciously did not give any hints about the unfinished comics and the expense of travel. Makoto Takahashi never told the little sea otter about these things. I think the little sea otter will be very happy for this special gift when he goes back. Makoto-kun, I'm sorry. Rina looked at the huge clock in the central square with a hint of helplessness on her face. Although she wanted to stay with Makoto Takahashi, class time was already here. Although Rina had previously proposed to ask for leave from school to accompany Takahashi Makoto did not agree. Then I'll leave first. Brother and Chenkun must get along well. Humph, the souls of a certain girl control and a certain Chuyunibu completed the resonance at this moment. Get along well? Huh. This annoying guy should disappear as soon as possible. You're in an unexpectedly good mood? Although the smile doesn't look very happy. Makoto Takahashi looked at Rina's retreating back and sighed helplessly. Is it really a forced smile? Hey, slime, you just can't hold up the wall, so what if he evolves into a boss? In the end, he's still a useless creature. Although I called you to invite you over, I feel a little regretful now. The smile on Ogata Eiji's face gradually disappeared. Looking at the direction Rina left, there was only endless worry. I thought your coming will help Rina let go of her burden, but unexpectedly it will have the opposite effect. That silly girl is really surprisingly persistent in some aspects. Although cooperating with a slime leader like you will be a lifelong shame for me. Makoto Takahashi looked unhappy and slowly stretched out his right hand. In order to reduce Rina's psychological burden, I had to ask for help from an outsider. Exactly the same as Takahashi Makoto's expression, Ogata Eiji also stretched out his right hand with an unhappy face. But Rina is the most important existence to me. The two people held their hands together, their souls resonated again, and they said the same words in unison. In order to let Rina regain that smile, I willing to pay any price. Regarding the frequent summons from another world, Makoto Takahashi did not deceive Yoshida on this point. Eiji Ogata did call several times, hoping that Makoto Takahashi could come here as soon as possible to visit Rina, who is in very poor condition recently. And Sebastian also reported the same thing to Makoto Takahashi through special channels. Although Takahashi Makoto and Ogata Eiji had collaborated before, they only temporarily suppressed and sealed Rina's inferiority complex. When Rina came to the Vienna Conservatory of Music, she was far away from the seal's caster Makoto Takahashi, and Ogata Eiji was alone. After all, she could not maintain the seal, so Rina fell into a dark period in her heart again. It's really, hey, Ogata slime, don't look at me with the look of all mistakes are because of you. Makoto Takahashi received the message from Ogata Eiji's eyes, and his face was full of displeasure. He complained, although my name has the word Chang, I am not the scumbag Chang. So, that night, the act of stopping me and Rina's 6 gods from merging was the root of all evil. So everything is wrong, it's all you, Ogata slime. The corners of Ogata Eiji's mouth kept twitching, while Sebastian on the side was smiling expectantly. In front of a brother with all attribute points, he said words such as pushing down the body without restraint. Fortunately, Ogata Eiji did not have the power of contract like Lelich, otherwise Takahashi Makoto would definitely be brainwashed by hypnosis and become a man who is worse than a sea cucumber, may understand the real philosophy and enter the philosophical hell. Because of Takahashi Makoto's inappropriate remarks, the restriction switch of the sister-controlled Ogata slime was triggered. After the restriction was lifted, Ogata slime entered a violent state and had a violent verbal conflict with Takahashi Makoto. After that, the alliance is broken and dissolved. As for the plan to save Princess Rina, it was also forced to be suspended. Huh? The ring rising on the water. Makoto Takahashi walked to the fountain and shouted happily, "Little sea otter, it seems you can catch fish here." Do you want to try the explosion challenge? Master Phoenix Academy God, instead of fishing or something, I think we need to. The little sea otter kept looking at the beautiful women passing by, and wanted to start tailing with expectation, but was stopped in time by the smiling Showbiz. Got it? I'm a little tired today. If you want to play, you can go by yourself. Makoto Takahashi was about to go back to the hotel to rest. Looking at the happy little sea otter who was about to walk alone, Makoto Takahashi continued to add information, but this place is not safe at night. It's not good, there will be attacks on foreign tourists traveling alone. And it is said that most of the perpetrators are uncles who like men. After taking the overly worried little sea otter back to the hotel and raising it, Makoto Takahashi returned to the room, took out a notebook, and started to draw. Sebastian showed an enigmatic smile, put the brewed black tea on the table, stood quietly aside, and entered a state of readiness at any time. Hey, Sebastian, I'm just a cartoonist. Makoto Takahashi picked up the brush. Although he seemed to be talking to Sebastian, he was talking to himself. No, it's not really, a cartoonist is just a plagiarist. Now I have become the target of a celebrity idol, haha, fate is so naughty sometimes. Concerning Miss Rina's matter, has the young master thought of what to do? The smile on Sebastian's face did not change at all, but a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He looked at Makoto Takahashi with an unknown look and said, looks like he is listening to the teachings. I haven't studied psychology, and I'm not that bastard white-faced man named Wiseman. I don't have sharp mental manipulation skills like verbal suggestion. Makoto Takahashi showed a lonely expression on his face. I want to save a fool who hides his emotions. Princess, this is really a troublesome thing. But Makoto Takahashi did not continue talking, but started drawing in his notebook. Sebastian just stood behind Makoto Takahashi, quietly watching Makoto Takahashi draw without making any sound. In the whole room, there was only the sound of the brush rubbing against the manuscript paper, and the slight sound of breathing. With the determination to redeem Rina, Makoto Takahashi decided to complete a short story and enter cheating mode again. Master, it's time for you to rest. Sebastian took out his pocket watch and looked at the time, trying to stop Takahashi Makoto's behavior. Showbiz-chan. Makoto Takahashi rubbed his sore shoulders, ignoring the swelling and pain in his right eye, and once again held the brush tightly. His hand began to tremble non-stop, and the lines on the paper began to lose shape. But Takahashi Makoto did not stop, but gritted his teeth and persisted. It's almost done. If this short story can't save Rina, I will kill Ogata Slime to ashes. On the silver-covered slope, amidst the swirling white snow, the silver-haired girl and the not-so-tall figure finally embraced each other. This is the last page of drawing. Takahashi Makoto's right hand has begun to feel numb. Except for a short rest and eating at Sebastian's strong request, Takahashi Makoto spent all his time. A lot of time was spent on the creation of this short story. Takahashi Makoto didn't even know that Rina had arrived several times and then left silently. The darkness in Princess Rina's heart will be broken by this short story. Lord Emperor Wu, please lend me your power. That's right, Makoto Takahashi drew the Tomoyo chapter. Tomoya Okazaki, a problem student who has problems with attendance and has been labeled as a bad student. Tomoyo Sakegami, who has both good character and academic skills, is a new student council president who is too good to say anything. No matter how you look at it, they are people from two different worlds, but they start dating because they like each other. The difference in status makes their love ups and downs. The reason why Tomoya broke up was not only for Tomoyo's sake, but also because of his growing sense of guilt and inferiority. Although Rina did not break up with Tomoya as painfully as Tomoya, the two of them have similar resonances in some aspects. After reading this short story, Rina could no longer clearly see the tired look on Takahashi Makoto's face, because she couldn't stop crying and her vision was completely blurred. especially when Rina saw the last few cartoons of The Snow is Falling. The girl Tomoyo wearing a plaid coat said loudly that she will keep walking towards Tomoyo-kun, and Tomoyo responded that she will try her best to go to Tomoyo-kun's side. Her whole body was all ready. He threw himself into Takahashi Makoto's arms and burst into tears. Oh, 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 it seems that releasing such a foul work is really. Makoto Takahashi comforted Rina in his arms and whispered softly, "Princess Rina, I will keep walking towards you, so you have to work hard to catch up." "Well, Makoto-kun. Thank you, you." Rina hugged Takahashi Makoto tightly with both hands, with no intention of letting go. Then, Makoto Takahashi blew a breath of hot air into Rina's ear. "Let's combine the 6 gods tonight and get the first blood." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 114. Sorry, the user you dialed has turned off his phone. This voice prompt made the anxious Yoshida want to throw his phone to the ground. The agreed 2 weeks have already passed, and now it is almost a month. Makoto Takahashi seems to have disappeared. He still has not shown up, has not actively contacted, and has not been contacted. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. That bastard Cheng must have planned it long ago. Yoshida gritted his teeth, looking like he wanted to get rid of Makoto Takahashi quickly. I was very curious before, why I found the content of each 4-chapter manga. That guy made up his mind from the beginning to go out for a month, right? As for contacting the little sea otter, Yoshida also found a mobile phone with a note on it from where Takahashi SEI hid the manga manuscript. Yoshida, who was very good at controlling and supervising Hiromaru, could recognize it at a glance. This was definitely Hiromaru's mobile phone, even though it had this written on it. Not the little sea otter's phone's note. Speaking of which, this childish approach would probably only be done by a middle school guy, right? The pencil lead is not broken, and the note clamped on the door has no trace of being moved. Yoshida once again came to the door of Takahashi Makoto's house. After checking the device he had set up before, his face was full of disappointment. The result, still not back. Speaking of Yoshida, do you think that by setting up a small trap like Yagamitsuki to prevent intrusion, you can detect the sincerity of Takahashi G of the Phoenix Academy? This kind of behavior is really too superficial. You must know that in this world, the author of DN is the fierce demon king of the Phoenix Academy. Has Cheng been here before? The man with yellow-haired glasses was thinking hard about the plot of the comic. When he opened the door, he saw a haggard-looking Yoshida. The time was about a month after Takahashi Makoto disappeared, and the location was in the studio of Ajakanaha. The parties included the Ajakanaha duo who looked surprised, and the haggard editor Yoshida, well, and the local wife of Mr. Huang Mao and glasses is lucky. Really? Cheng and Himaru-kun have never appeared in your area. Yoshida transformed into a righteous police officer and investigated the missing cartoonist incident. Then when you last saw them, was it more than 20 days ago? Cheng hasn't come back yet. Yoshida's words surprised Aiken Mumenjai and the two of them. Landai took out the Young Jump release this week and turned to the serialization part of Steel Refining with doubts on his face. Asked, although I haven't heard Aiken's crazy laughter during this period, it seems that Hugh doesn't appear in Aiken's comics. Humph. According to the card reminder left by Cheng, I rummaged through the whole house and finally found the comic manuscript behind the wall clock. Yoshida became very angry when he thought of this and interrupted rudely. Hearing Landai's words, in other words, you haven't seen Aiken either. No, the three of them looked apologetically and shook their heads in unison. Excuse me. I'll go take a look at Eiji Naizuma's place again. Yoshida turned around and left without gaining anything, complaining in a low voice as he walked, really, where did those two bastards go? If you don't come back, what will happen to the next comic draft? In front of Vienna airport, Makoto Takahashi and Little Sea Otter showed extremely depressed expressions on their faces at the same time. The reason why Little Sea Otter is depressed is because the vacation is over and he has to go back to the life of drawing comics day and night, and the reason why Takahashi Makoto is depressed is that not only did he not get the first blood, but the person who saw him off was not Princess Rina, is the most annoying slime boss. The airport has arrived, then. Have a nice trip. Ogata Age's simple and perfunctory farewell made Takahashi Makoto very unhappy. Ogata Age didn't care about Takahashi Makoto's angry face and continued to flog the corpse with his sword. It's best not to do it again. Should I say burning bridges? Or ungrateful? Makoto Takahashi took out a scarecrow tied with a red thread from his bag, with a sinister smile on his face. Although cursing others is a double-edged sword, in after I die, my soul will also fall into hell, but Ogata slime, even if I cannot ascend to the paradise of paradise in the future, my soul will linger in endless pain forever. At this moment, I also want you to enter hell immediately. Do you want to die once? What a boring brat. Ogata Age didn't care about Takahashi Makoto's threat, turned around and raised his hand. About Rina, thank you. Hey, Makoto Takahashi silently put the scarecrow into his backpack. Going into hell with a man? Are you kidding me? If you really do this, you will definitely be reincarnated as a second generation like King Harrington in your next life. Hey, Master Phoenix Academy God, do you really want to go back? Little Sea Otter looked reluctant, but give up this life. Now that the matter has been done, there is no point in staying here. Makoto Takahashi looked at the sky in the distance. Yes, I have to go back now. Return to the gloomy country of Liber and establish the Tianxia. Complete our hegemony. From now on, Little Sea Otter, you have to work hard. It's great. Sea Otter has been on hiatus for 2 weeks. Readers must be looking forward to it. A reluctant smile appeared on the Little Sea Otter's face. The reason Makoto Takahashi said come on is to let the Little Sea Otter instantly upgrade its level and evolve from a captive pet to a quasi-mythical beast. Don't think about anything else for Fire Kylan. That species is a tragedy. It appeared full of momentum, but in the end, it was all destroyed in the end even though it was soy sauce. Since the Little Sea Otter is a qualified pet, Makoto Takahashi did not use the Great Evolution Potion to evolve him into a mythical beast. Just like the previous few days, Yoshida also came to Takahashi Makoto's house for testing today. Yoshida, who thought he had gained nothing, made a major discovery today, because there was a man standing in front of Makoto Takahashi's house. The huge cloak and hood make it difficult to tell whether the person standing is a man or a woman. The existence of the hood covered most of this person's face. Even Yoshida, who was hidden at an excellent angle, could not be sure that this person was Takahashi Makoto. There was a shining golden triangle ornament hanging on this man's chest. Looking at the ornament, Yoshida felt a sense of familiarity, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Is this here? A hoarse voice came from the mouth of the cloaked weirdo, and he retreated as soon as his hand touched the door lock. Is this the home of the Time and Space Observer? Huh. Has a defensive barrier been set up? A boring little trick. Yoshida was certain that this was not Makoto Takahashi's voice, even though the cloaked weirdo spoke in such a neutral tone. It's exactly like accidentally touching the socket with your hand. It's just a door opening. Is this necessary? And what about the enchantment? The detective game is over. My beloved cat, you are dead, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in Yoshida's ears. Before Yoshida could react, his eyes went dark and his vision was blocked by something. Immediately afterwards, the body was placed on the ground by irresistible force. Little Sea Otter, my beloved cat is no longer able to resist, so I leave it to you. You can do whatever you want, but you only have this chance. Come on, Little Sea Otter. Just like a certain fellow Taoist, let's take the blood of a certain broken-armed hero's wife. Takahashi Makoto, before Yoshida was on the verge of death, he let out a deceptive trick called Death Roar, and the unsuspecting Takahashi Makoto and the little sea otter were caught. Sure enough, the last words type of moves are quite disgusting. In the evening, Yoshida's face was ashen and he stared at Makoto Takahashi, who was playing with his mobile phone. The expression on his face was sometimes angry, sometimes shy. In short, it was a very complicated expression. Many photos were taken before. Although I have never seen them, looking at the smile that appeared on Takahashi Makoto's face inadvertently, Yoshida felt a chill. In other words, did you take the little sea otter to Vienna? After listening to Takahashi Makoto's account, Yoshida complained angrily, with veins appearing on his head, "You can't tell me this kind of thing in advance." For a moment, I thought you were missing, so I was going to call the police. That was really a fierce battle. Makoto Takahashi recalled the comic strips during this period, and suddenly fell into an extreme worship mode for himself, being able to complete the mission of redeeming the princess in a short period of time. I am indeed not a human being. This is. Sharp-eyed Yoshida saw what appeared to be a manga manuscript in Takahashi Makoto's backpack, and immediately stood up and took it out. "I didn't expect you, Chen. What is this? This content doesn't seem to be you. The comic is being serialized now." "Huh? Are you talking about the story of Tomoyo?" Makoto Takahashi snatched the manga manuscript from Yoshida's hand. "Don't touch it. This is the redemption from Emperor Wu, one of the keys to unlocking the treasure of the king." Tomoyo chapter? The king's treasure. Although Yoshida looked curious, Takahashi Makoto had no intention of explaining at all. Instead, he lowered his head and entered the memory-killing mode with his face constantly changing. And Yoshida also took advantage of Makoto Takahashi's distraction to start reading comics. Although the story told in the comic is very ordinary, just the emotional entanglement of a pair of lovers, and it has a happy ending in the end, Yoshida is still deeply involved. Yoshida looked at the manga manuscript in his hand and recalled what Makoto Takahashi said before. Just the story of Tomoyo chapter is so touching, so what kind of comic will the entire chapter be? Although he really wanted Takahashi Makoto to draw the complete story, Yoshida remembered that Takahashi Makoto was currently serializing 3 comics at the same time, and such thoughts disappeared instantly. Yoshida clearly remembered the haggard appearance of Takahashi Makoto before, so this time Yoshida was not too entangled in the matter of Takahashi Makoto escaping for travel. And now Makoto Takahashi seems to feel a little different. "Chen, don't you need a break?" Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was walking towards the table, put away his complicated thoughts, and showed a trace of worry on his face. "I can't stop, my body can't help but want to draw." What kind of secret skills are contained in the so-called comics? This is something I have been exploring. Makoto Takahashi took the brush and began to draw comics on the manuscript paper. "Come on, it can save Princess Rina, who has fallen into the hell of low self-esteem, it can make people cry and laugh, and it can stop the confused hearts from being displaced. This is the miracle caused by comics. Since I am a world-class demon king, I have to master this secret skill." Finally, on that day, I understood the meaning of life, and I truly lived. This tone. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with a pale face. After traveling for a while, did the Chuyunibu evolve again? The flames of heaven and earth change in an instant, the gates of hell face darkness, the devil descends and splits the boulders, the winged dragon of the sun god flies in the wind and flies to the end, mastering my thoughts. Takahashi Makoto put down his brush, crossed his hands in front of his chest, and silently chanted a spell to the comic in front of him. "The sun god will always be loyal to the person who chants the spell. I will become one with the sun god, the phoenix, fly." A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 115. Chapter 115 should be in my lifetime. After the release of Shonen Jump this week, it was a torment for Yoshida, who was waiting for the result. Although Yoshida was not very optimistic about the story of Inuyasha, since it has passed the serialization meeting and entered the serialization, there is no point in saying anything now. Is this the beginning of the monster era? Yoshida, who was waiting for the result, flipped through the comics in his hand uneasily, and read the first 2 chapters of Inuyasha again, frowning, but no matter how many times I read it, I always feel that the appearance and disappearance of the character Nuriki is a bit inexplicable. As the editor-in-chief, Yoshida's vision for comics is naturally needless to say. Although he complained about Inuyasha many times at the beginning, Yoshida was still quite interested in this comic about monster stories. Dog monsters, Nuriki, dragon bone spirit. At first, Yoshida thought that these monsters were made up by Makoto Takahashi, but after checking the relevant information, he found that there are many legends about monsters like Nuriki among the people. Although Dongjo belongs to Zhongzhou, the history has not changed much. The history of hundreds of years ago still exists. Along with the history, there are also many folk legends about gods, ghosts, and monsters. Don't underestimate these seemingly useless things. These are one of the inheritances of a national culture. Although they are now strongly impacted by the Western mythology system, these local legends cannot be erased, because they represent the culture of an era. Many readers don't know about the monster era opened by Feng Guangyuan Xiongzhen. The only thing they know is that Feng Guangyuan Xiongzhen, the middle school cartoonist, has started to serialize a new comic called Inuyasha. Hanyu doesn't like most of the comics serialized in Youth Jump now. As a picky comic fan, she doesn't like hot-blooded fighting comics very much. Despite this, Hanyu still insists on buying Youth Jump, because among the many hot-blooded fighting comics, there are occasionally some comics with love as the theme. The handsome guy of the second dimension, but this girl who is a little crazy, has always been looking forward to it in her heart. Hanyu did not rush to buy Shonen Jump on the first day of its release as usual, because her favorite comic, Guardian Girl AI by Ayam, suddenly ended, and was replaced by Inuyasha by Howin Kyoma. After the comic she liked ended, Hanyu felt a little depressed, especially the slightly hasty ending of Guardian Girl AI, which made Hanyu extremely resentful. In addition to being unhappy with the original comic author, Hanyu also resented the replacement comic for the sudden ending of her favorite comic. Therefore, the newly serialized Inuyasha was also hated by Hanyu. Regarding Inuyasha, Hanyu lost the desire to read it after hearing the name. For Hanyu, who is somewhat afraid of supernatural events, Yasha has always been a hideous evil ghost, and in Hanyu's understanding, comics involving this type of comics are all bloody and violent. Of course, there is another reason why Hanyu does not want to read Inuyasha, that is, the author of this comic is Howin Kyoma. Whether it was the previously serialized Higurashi or the Crayon Shin-chan that caused a crusade among comic fans because of its ending, Hanyu was afraid of the cartoonist Howin Kyoma. Especially when Higurashi just started serializing, Hanyu was excited to see many cute girls appear, but after reading the various endings of Higurashi that all died, and then suffered the brutal double blow of the tragic ending of Crayon Shin-chan, Hanyu, who was healed and covered with wounds, has completely banished the cartoonist named Howin Kyoma. Well, let's take a look at the latest new serialized comics that run. Dafa Fight, although it feels a bit childish, it's pretty funny. Looking at the new issue of Shonen Jump on the table, Hanyu was bored and flipped through it casually. Full Metal Alchemist and Higurashi were not comics that Hanyu liked, so he skipped them directly. Hanyu, who was flipping through the pages quickly, suddenly stopped because a close-up of a handsome character made her curious. Who is this? Silver-white long hair, a crescent mark on the forehead, 2 strange patterns on each cheek, a white kimono embroidered with hexagonal plums, and eyes that are completely different from those of humans. The whole character looks noble and imposing. Although it was just the first time she saw it, Hanyu's heartbeat accelerated. The first impression of this character on her was that of a handsome and taciturn nobleman with an expressionless face. Inuyasha, Nkuma, Because she was attracted by this character, Hanyu curiously flipped forward a few pages and was a little speechless. This character was a character from the new serial Inuyasha by Nkuma, but seeing the author's name, Hanyu was extremely entangled. Although she was very curious about what story that nobleman-like character would have in the comics, when she thought that the author was Nkuma, Hanyu began to entangle herself, worrying that this comic would be like Crayon Shin-chan, digging another healing pit. Ah, never mind, even if it's a trap, I'm going to jump in. At most, I'll never read Feng Guangai Yuan Xiangjin's comics again. Hanyu found an excuse for herself. Anyway, I just want to read the story of that handsome nobleman, that's enough. The story does not mention the protagonist Inuyasha at the beginning, but tells the story of a monster named Inu no Taisho before his life ended. After drinking and talking with his monster friend Huapiao, and fighting with the big monster Longjing, he dragged his seriously injured body to talk to his sons Shimaru. Do you want power so much? Why are you so thirsty for power? The path we should take is domineering. Power is the way to expand this path. Domineering? Shimaru, do you have someone you want to protect? The one to protect? Shimaru, don't need such a person at all. Sesshomaru disagreed with Inu no Taisho's ideas, and Inu no Taisho did not refute anything, but turned into a huge monster and flew into the sky. This inexplicable dialogue made Hanyu read on with confusion and curiosity. As for the idea of only watching Shimaru's story at the beginning, it had long been thrown out of the window. Inu no Taisho broke into the human city and rescued his wife Princess Izayoi, who had just died. The seriously injured Inu no Taisho named his son Inuyasha, and then died together with Setsuna Mengguan and was buried in the Sea of Fire, which seemed to echo the previous words of protection. Seeing the death of Inu no Taisho, Hanyu was speechless. Combined with the previous comics, Inu no Taisho, as a monster, was a very powerful existence. However, in order to protect his wife and children, he dragged his seriously injured body and broke into the encirclement set by humans, and finally even sacrificed his life. Is this the so-called having the intention to protect in mind, so it will be so powerful that it is invincible? The content of the second episode, in addition to the beginning of the story that Inuyasha was sealed in the tree by the witch Kikyo, then directly turned to modern society. A woman who looks exactly like Kikyo traveled from the ancient well of her own shrine to the ancient times and found Inuyasha sealed in the tree. The content of the second episode ends here. The development of the second chapter. As a comic fan, Hanyu has some understanding of the new serialized comics of Shonen Jump. Generally, when a comic is newly serialized, the content of 2 chapters will be published directly. However, looking at the content of the second chapter, Hanyu was a little speechless. At the beginning, it looked like an ancient style. How could it suddenly jump to many years later? And the matter of traveling to ancient times, it is stuck at this point again. I really want to know what happened later. The curiosity was completely aroused. The girl who had vowed before that she would never read Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma's comics again was now conquered by Inuyasha. So, women are fickle animals, Hanyu is like this, and so is Ueno Aoi. Teacher Takahashi Makoto, can't you draw more content about Shimaru? Ueno Aoi, who had previously said she was going to leave the Phoenix Courtyard studio out of anger, now had a flattering smile on her face, and used the girl's unique trick of acting cute and coquettish. Okay. Teacher Takahashi Makoto, Aiken, little brother Chang. It's useless even if you call me master. Takahashi Makoto turned his head away with a narrow-minded look, and you have already used the skill of acting cute. In view of your previous attempt to betray the Demon King, I reject all your requests now. Humph. Small-minded little man, Ueno Aoi pouted unhappily, and looked at Yoshida who had just entered the door for help. This. Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto who was drawing a comic and fell into a state of entanglement in response to Ueno Aoi's look of help. Helping a girl to plead can increase intimacy, but it will be hated by the great demon king Takahashi Makoto. Is this an equal exchange? Yoshida smiled helplessly and walked behind Takahashi Makoto. Chen, you. Tisk. Wrong decision. The age of monsters or something. Do you want to maintain the dignity of Gaia lowly and deliberately lead me down this path? World, Sinai. Takahashi Makoto, who was drawing a comic, suddenly threw the brush in his hand on the table, lowered his head in disappointment, and fell into a state of entanglement. After hearing such a speech, Ueno Aoi, who was expecting it, had a gloomy face and lowered her head to continue working. She was desperate for the previous proposal. This situation has happened before. This is the third time since the serialization of Inuyasha. There are 52 weeks in a year, which means that Shonen Jump, which is published in a weekly format, must be published at least 52 times a year. This number is not good news for Takahashi Makoto. As the opening chapter of The Age of Monsters, Inuyasha has a total of 558 chapters according to the original work. In other words, if the series is serialized at the current pace of one chapter per week, it will take 10 years to complete, but this is only the beginning of the yokai era. The three subsequent eras, as well as the comic used to kill gods and prove the truth, after roughly estimating the time required, Takahashi Makoto fell into a state of suffocation. These comics should be completed in my lifetime. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 116. The results came out on Friday. Yoshida came here not to collect drawings, but to tell Makoto Takahashi the results. However, as soon as Yoshida entered the door, he was dragged into the Ueno Aoi's cute begging incident. After finally coming up with a healing technique to save Makoto Takahashi who was in a state of death, Yoshida held the result tightly in his hands. His face was hesitant. Although he doesn't know what Makoto Takahashi is struggling with, Yoshida also knows that Makoto Takahashi is in a very low mood now, and maybe he shouldn't stimulate him anymore. My beloved cat, you. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with his hands in his pockets and stopped mid-sentence. He looked up and down at Yoshida, who was wearing a black suit, and suddenly a look of understanding appeared on his face. That's it? Were you the one who sent me on my way this time? I really didn't expect that you would be the one who took action in the end. At this time, are you still in the mood to talk about this? Yoshida was still thinking about his thoughts and did not listen carefully to what Takahashi Makoto said. Thinking that the results of the comics were not very good, Yoshida was a little disappointed and a little unwilling at the same time. Hey, Aiken, before. At this time, don't recall the past. I know that you have been undercover by my side for many years, and your heart has fallen, right? Killing the existence you longed for is a painful thing. Back then, I also, forget it. I have been very tired these years. Makoto Takahashi looked at the surprised Yoshida and gently took off the blindfold on the left side of his face. It's just you. I understand your difficulties. Is this a designated mission from the superiors? It seems that the superiors don't trust you very much. Think about your young children and your old mother. Just kill me like this. From now on, people will enjoy endless glory and wealth, and their lives will no longer be stressful, so don't hesitate, hurry up and take action. Searched Ken on Google. Dressed in a black suit and with a troubled look on his face, Makoto Takahashi was certain that Yoshida's current appearance was definitely the kind of killer who wanted to kill his friends in movies and TV shows. Although Takahashi Makoto has been recalling in his heart what things he has done recently that have caused resentment, but the more Takahashi Makoto thought about it, the more things happened. It seemed that he had offended many people without knowing it. Thinking of this, he was it doesn't matter if you kill or something. Is this the fate of the Demon King? This is fine. Seeing Yoshida's hand slowly stretching out from his suit pocket, Takahashi Makoto's right eye twitched, and after sighing, he slowly closed it. Eyes. The existence of the so-called devil is the existence of tragedy. He is either a stepping stone to become a hero, or he is tortured to death by his subordinates in a series of infernal ways. From the day he called himself the fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy, he already had this realization. Feeling the pain of being knocked on his head, Takahashi Makoto opened his eyes in confusion and saw Yoshida with an angry face, ready to continue the double combo. Don't let my imagination turn into an inexplicable development, Chang, you bastard. Yoshida threw the reader's survey paper on the table. What were you thinking just now? Why should I kill you? What about the mother of this child? I'm just an unmarried single editor, don't think of me as an undercover killer. Hey. Then why are you dressed like a killer? In a black suit, the thing you slowly pulled out from your heart, isn't it a gun? Tisk, 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 that's not professional at all. Makoto Takahashi knew that he would be wrong, and turned his head away with a somewhat embarrassed expression. As for admitting his mistake and apologizing, that is absolutely impossible. Makoto Takahashi activated the magic card topic change, and you have been single for so many years, how dare you be so loud? My beloved cat, you are destined to live alone. The corner of Yoshida's mouth twitched. When Makoto Takahashi finally cast the single curse, he was clearly in the room, but he did feel a cold wind blowing by. Could it be that the curse really came true? Do you really want to be single for the rest of your life? This is... Makoto Takahashi picked up the results of the reader survey from the table. After looking at it carefully, a trace of doubt appeared on his face. Hey, my familiar cat, there seems to be something wrong with this result. You know it too. After Yoshida complained angrily, he sat on the sofa and his expression gradually became serious. Hey, Chen, I told you before that fantasy like Inuyasha, although monsters are the main theme of comics and time travel is a highlight, the main line of the story is relatively simple. According to what you said before, the whole story revolves around collecting the fragments of the Shiken Jade. Something like this the story might have been better a few years ago, but in this day and age, this kind of comic is already a bit old-fashioned and outdated. Is it old-fashioned and outdated? Maybe it is. After all, it was a comic many years ago. Makoto Takahashi lowered his head in despair. After thinking for a moment, he raised his head and looked at Yoshida with a somewhat dissatisfied expression. Shiu, how can we reverse this wrong world? Just use a vitality bomb to return everything to chaos. The person who is at fault is you, not the world. Yoshida complained in time about the last hit, because you want to destroy the world for such a little reason, you are really... Humph. How could such a noble being, the wings of dreams, a free soul, be bound and tainted by this twisted world? Originally, the mission of every time traveler was to save the world. But... Makoto Takahashi, he complained with an unhappy look on his face, since this world dissatisfies me, what can I do to save it? It's better to destroy it completely. Hey, we should talk about destroying the world after the completion of the manga. Yoshida took out the notebook from his bag and began to try to comfort His Majesty the Demon King Takahashi Makoto, who was entering the stage of world destruction. Chang, as before, judging from some statistics I collected, there are some places that need to be changed in the comics you previously serialized. Hey. I'm an intuitive person. Data people are the most pitiful existence. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with disdain. Comics, as long as they are interesting. Data, 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 the quality of comics is all determined by the data you talk about. Sales volume, reader survey rankings, popularity index, these are indeed important and irreplaceable for Shonen Jump, but it is because of this, cartoonists have become sad clowns, their souls have lost their freedom and are tied to the stone monument of data. Yoshida couldn't refute Takahashi Makoto's remarks for a while. Because he had heard of such a situation before. There was a cartoonist's cartoon. Although the content of the story was very innovative, under the persuasion of an editor who used data as a criterion, the cartoonist changed the work. The original intention was to delete most of the interesting outfits, and only cut out one of the popular stories, and developed it into a full-length novel. Although the cartoonist was very heartbroken about this, because all the ideas he had been thinking about before had to be discarded because of poor data, but in an era where everything speaks for itself with data, the cartoonist could only give in helplessly. You must know that every comic, no, even every painting, the cartoonist has thought hard and worked hard to create it seriously. Although the content of one chapter is not very much, readers can finish it in a short time. But how much time does it take to create comics? Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, who looked a little pale, and his tone softened unconsciously. The data represents everything. This indifferent number completely explains the hard work of the cartoonist. Pen obliteration. That's right, our cartoonist's free soul has been completely sealed by the barrier called data. Yoshida fell completely silent. Although the role of the editor is to provide some guidance to the cartoonists, sometimes, because of the so-called data, the cartoonists interfere too much and restrict the cartoonist's creation of comics. Comics, we create with our heart and build a world with our souls. Are you so eager for sales, so eager for profits? Makoto Takahashi was in a state of rage at this moment, and his right eye was filled with anger. And started to turn a little red. You even don't hesitate to trample our only world. Don't you have any sense of shame? We. Seeing Makoto Takahashi on the verge of going berserk, Yoshida's tone became weaker, and he kept retreating, trying to explain something, but nothing could be said. I can't forgive. I absolutely can't forgive you. Takahashi Makoto's Demon King's aura was fully activated, and he activated the true Tumuzu. Intruders who are obsessed with profit and insult the soul of our proud and free cartoonist, we will use the precious phantoms in our hands, the red rose that can penetrate the devil and the inevitable yellow rose, and with the help of the power of the holy sword, completely destroy this, the era of chaos. Let you remember the anger and unwillingness of our souls when you are repenting in hell. The empty room echoed with this extremely angry curse. Yoshida's face was full of guilt. The previous intention of asking Takahashi Makoto to change the content has completely disappeared. Instead, he was sharply beaten by Takahashi Makoto. The words made me break into a cold sweat. Hey, my beloved cat, do you know the purpose of my launching the King's Feast? Makoto Takahashi suddenly laughed strangely. Before you want to create a world, you must destroy it once. Just like before with the Black Flame, as Wang said, together we will completely destroy this unpleasant world. No, it should be a new world, a world dominated by us. Is this the abnormal behavior mentioned before? Yoshida had already retreated to the door. Looking at Makoto Takahashi, who was almost crazy, he suddenly remembered what Ueno Aoi said before, and his face turned extremely ugly. I used to think that it was just a relapse of Takahashi Makoto's Chuyunibu, which had already improved, but now, hey, what a joke. There are no signs of improvement here. It has simply reached a point of hopelessness, right? He, be lucky. Human beings in this era, Makoto Takahashi stuck out his tongue and licked his lips, the smile on his face became more and more dangerous. After all, you will be the ones who can witness the miracle of the world's destruction and rebirth. The honor of a lifetime. Yoshida turned around and ran away without any sense of discipline. If he stayed any longer, he would definitely be torn into pieces by the increasingly dangerous Makoto Takahashi. This was the message that Yoshida's sixth sense had been conveying. "Hey. I'm finally gone." Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida, who was escaping in a hurry. His face gradually recovered, and he slowly walked to the table, picked up the manga manuscript of Inuyasha, and looked at it slowly. "It's really what a coward. But let's talk about the soul of a cartoonist, haha. Only by not caring about so-called data can we truly reach the realm of freedom," Makoto Takahashi said as he tore the reader survey paper into pieces with a smile. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 117. Yoshida, who had been brainwashed by Makoto Takahashi before, had a good exchange of life philosophy with the editor-in-chief, and after a week of personality repair, he finally got rid of the stigmata imposed by Makoto Takahashi through psychological suggestion, and came to discuss with Makoto Takahashi again modification matters of Inuyasha. But looking at Yoshida's dazed look, it turns out that there are still some side effects after the stigma is lifted. Intrusion, modification, deletion, 3 layers of secret techniques form a superimposed network, opening up the shocking era of monsters, paving the way for me to become a god, super summoning the most ferocious work of the Phoenix Academy, True Red Lotus. Inuyasha. Watching Makoto Takahashi make all kinds of crazy and cool moves with his hands in conjunction with the incomprehensible words, Yoshida felt deeply powerless, and at the same time, he had more doubts about his previous brainwashing behavior. However, looking at the weird smile that flashed across Makoto Takahashi's face from time to time, Yoshida felt sad. Although he was extremely curious and confused, he still wisely chose to avoid talking about the topics discussed before. "My beloved cat, I am thinking about something. If possible." Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida expectantly. "Can you report to Shangfeng?" About the comics, Yoshida breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that Takahashi Makoto didn't mention the previous matter, and at the same time looked at Makoto Takahashi with confusion. "Did Cheng serialize 3 comics at the same time, so that you feel a lot of pressure? If this is the case, you can discuss it with the editor." "It's not this, but..." Takahashi Makoto showed a tangled look on his face, complaining with regret. "As the beginning of the yokai era, the manga Inuyasha is too long. Although I think it's a bit regretful, but for future plans, we must not take any special measures. It turns out that the fusion monster is difficult to master. Is it because I haven't defeated Sakeki and obtained the green badge? Is Inuyasha very long?" Yoshida picked up the coffee on the table and took a sip. "According to the main plot you mentioned, Cheng, there is not much content that can be told. If the story mode is confirmed, it may be serialized. A conservative estimate, it will take 10 years, Makoto Takahashi directly took Yoshida's words and said helplessly, "That is 1/10 of the upper limit of the lifespan of lower creatures like humans. It's only 10 years, wait. 10 years, Yoshida suddenly reacted and looked at Makoto Takahashi in surprise. "How come there are so many? And it's a conservative estimate, by the way, you have already thought of so many. What's the content? Don't be kidding me. Although your words are a bit weird, Cheng, but if you say your comics can be serialized for 10 years, do you think your brain's computing capacity has surpassed that of humans? In terms of pure calculation capacity, because of the existence of the search engine in the brain, Takahashi Makoto has indeed surpassed humans. Regarding the fact that the IQ and memory of my beloved cat are at negative values, Takahashi Makoto responded with a sympathetic face and was completely unsympathetic. Necessary explanation, Makoto Takahashi switched to Misaka mode and looked at Yoshida with a paralyzed expression. Because of the intrusive plot in Inuyasha, the serialization time of the original work may be extended. With such a silly expression, Takahashi Makoto complained in his heart that he would be an editor running errands for the rest of his life. "Speak to me properly," Once Takahashi Makoto enters the speaking mode, he will ridicule unscrupulously. Yoshida has black lines on his head and whispers, "Didn't you talk well before? Why did you suddenly start talking like this?" Because of the mention of the amount of calculation, the circuit switch in Takahashi Makoto's brain was triggered, and Takahashi Makoto automatically switched to Misaka mode. Takahashi Makoto reminded him kindly with a kind face. "I'm leaving, you can think about it yourself." Yoshida stood up without hesitation, turned around and left. Makoto Takahashi is like this now, making sarcastic remarks while talking about things, and he can't communicate normally at all. But Makoto Takahashi did not hold back at all, but politely sent Yoshida out the door. By the way, because Yoshida left in a hurry, he left everything including his briefcase at Makoto Takahashi's house. Regarding the issue of Inuyasha being serialized for a long time, Makoto Takahashi is also very confused. Especially in order to lay the foundation for the era of monsters, we planned to add a lot of random characters before, but now it seems that the so-called 10-year series of works is very likely to be a series in my lifetime. A few years later, will the grandfather lying on the bed tell his grandson? Don't forget to tell Naiweng. The main plot of Inuyasha is the story of Kagome taking the dog monster and teaming up with the demon slayer couple to defeat Nariku and obtain the Shiken Jade. If you want to shorten the serialization time of Inuyasha, you must make some deletions, such as Kagome's daily life when she returns to school. If you follow the main line completely, you can probably save a lot of time. But for some random characters, you have to think carefully. The plot of the Edo period is behind Inuyasha, this is a certain thing. After all, there was a character suspected of Oda Nobunaga in Inuyasha, and the scene where the slippery old gangster robbed the princess wife happened many years after Oda Nobunaga's death, but, superposition is not the same as fusion. This is a very serious question. I wonder if the commander will accept the call for compromise. Makoto Takahashi was a little confused. If we can compromise, maybe there will be some room for change in Inuyasha without having to delete a lot of the plot, and the plan seems to be fine. Meeting. Although Takahashi Makoto did not explain the situation to Yoshida, the editor-in-chief still paid attention to Takahashi Makoto's matter. Whether it is the previous Dark Comics or the 3 comics being serialized at the same time, once Takahashi Makoto, who has a long criminal record, makes any changes, the editor-in-chief who is notified by Yoshida will immediately take action to prevent the spread of a certain middle school student's convulsions. I've heard Yoshida tell you the specific situation. The editor-in-chief pushed up his glasses and looked at Makoto Takahashi curiously, his tone gradually becoming serious. First of all, I have to confirm one thing, which is the new serialization of Inuyasha. Will this comic really be serialized for 10 years? Can you guarantee that it will not be cut in half due to a decline in popularity? Secondly, I want to know the evidence that you can guarantee that it will be serialized for 10 years. In other words, the storyboard of the whole story. Although what you said may be true, I don't agree with things that cannot be confirmed. Hey, you are so brave to doubt the truth of the Phoenix Academy's evil demon king. As soon as Takahashi Makoto's words left his mouth, Yoshida suddenly screamed inwardly and wanted to get away in time, but it was already too late. My beloved cat, let's kill the commander together. Takahashi Makoto, I'm not here to hear these boring jokes from you. The editor-in-chief knocked on the table and looked at Makoto Takahashi seriously. Yoshida also mentioned to me before that you seem to have other things. Can you elaborate on your thoughts? Of course, if it's just a silly joke, forget it. This kind of momentum after coming out of the world of purgatory, completing the killing of thousands of people and gaining the title of unparalleled, it turns out that the commander is not immortal. Makoto Takahashi smiled more and more awkwardly as he watched the editor-in-chief's face getting colder and colder. Then Commander, can you accept the compromise call? Now I am serializing 3 comics. After 2 of the comics are completed, Can I borrow the positions of these two comics to serialize Inuyasha at the same time? This kind of thing is absolutely impossible. Without the slightest hesitation, the editor's eyes were full of determination. I haven't made it clear yet how you prove it. I also know that you can't draw hundreds of words in a short period of time. Let's not talk about the storyboards for now. But Makoto Takahashi, you have to serialize 3 comics at the same time. This is an exception for Shonen Jump. You want to take this opportunity to exclusively serialize the comics. Right, this is impossible. So Takahashi Makoto, you just have to calm down now. The editor-in-chief didn't say much and left with a confused Yoshida. Editor-in-chief, what's going on when Aiken wants to monopolize? On the way back, after much hesitation, Yoshida asked the editor-in-chief curiously, won't the method Aiken said work? I think that if this Inuyasha can be serialized for 10 years. Don't you understand? The editor-in-chief looked at Yoshida's confused look, and his expression became serious. The method proposed by Makoto Takahashi is to wait until Full Steel and Higurashi are completed, and then let Inuyasha publish it. The content of 3 chapters, although this approach still seems to be equivalent to letting Takahashi Makoto serialize 3 comics at the same time, Yoshida, think about it carefully. Takahashi Makoto's approach will allow him to exclusively serialize the comics. Right. Could it be? Yoshida thought about it carefully, and suddenly understood, breaking out in a cold sweat. Yoshida had agreed with Makoto Takahashi's proposal before, but now that he thought about it carefully, he almost got tricked by Makoto Takahashi again. Got it? In one issue of Shonen Jump, there were a total of 20 comics serialized, of which Makoto Takahashi's comics accounted for 3, after the completion of Refined and Higurashi, letting Inuyasha be serialized for 3 chapters to make up for it. Although it sounds like a good idea, the number of comics serialized in each issue of Shonen Jump has become 18. One manga of Inuyasha occupies the space of 3 mangas, so this kind of thing is totally unacceptable. What's more? Is there any follow-up for Aiken? Yoshida is now numb. Speaking of which, Aiken's middle-class brain circuit, isn't it really the structure of a normal person? Inuyasha was able to be serialized for 10 years. Although this cannot be proven, it also means that Takahashi Makoto has already conceived the following content. The editor-in-chief pushed up his glasses and looked a little pale. If I agreed before, and Makoto Takahashi's seemingly compromising method, so with his character, he will definitely propose to serialize 3 comics at the same time. If this cycle continues, only him and a few will be left in the entire Shonen Jump cartoonist. But I must be overthinking this kind of thing. Yoshida recalled Takahashi Makoto's previous statement about becoming the Demon King who unified the manga world. He was covered in cold sweat and shook his head repeatedly to deny the editor's statement, that Gai Cheng can definitely do it. After the editor-in-chief and Yoshida left, Takahashi Makoto, who had been deep in thought, finally exited his meditative state and looked at the cup left on the table with a trace of regret on his face. Hey! Has my plan been seen through? Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in displeasure. It was my fault for underestimating the commander's resourcefulness. But it seems like the commander has already taken precautions. The world plan has a long way to go. Now we can only go step by step. The 3rd update has arrived. Dear readers, please wait for a long time. The weather is getting cold, so please go to bed early and say good night. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 118. Tisk. Black Flame King, I'm sorry to waste this golden opportunity. We joined forces to occupy a quarter of the land, and wanted to continue to expand the victory, but the commander saw through the plan. Ahahaha, Mr. Feng Guangaiyuan, I told you before that the possibility of success of that plan is very low. The new manga Inuyasha is very interesting. The monster is very handsome. But compared to my new series, there is a certain gap. Although I was a little unhappy about being overtaken by the points before, it seems that this is an opportunity to fight back. Huh? Black Flame King, you underestimated the XYZ summoning. The superimposed effect is not shown at the beginning. The dog monster is just activated, it's just the key to the gate of time. We can't start a fierce war right from the start. The delicious food must be saved for the end. Oh? Open the gate of time? I see. I understand. I look forward to the world that you, Mr. Feng Guangai Yuan, are going to show you. The world, humph. I am the Demon King who destroyed the world and created the world. Crazy cartoonist, Feng Guangai Yuan Kima. The so-called world, become my slave. Ha ha ha. After the call was hung up, Takahashi Makoto, who was wearing a white coat, stopped walking and laughed wildly. The pedestrians around him looked sideways, and some were puzzled by the one-eyed boy who suddenly laughed wildly. They unconsciously backed away, fearing that this crazy behavior would be contagious. Yoshida, who had just finished shopping, wanted to say hello when he saw Takahashi Makoto from a distance, but when he saw Takahashi Makoto in a state of second-year laughter, he immediately stopped and carefully hid by the flower bed next to the cafe, fearing that Takahashi Makoto would see him. However, seeing Takahashi Makoto like this, Yoshida was relieved. Inuyasha has been serialized for a month and a half, and the result is neither good nor bad. Compared with Eiji Nazuma, who also started the second serialization, the current Inuyasha is a relatively unsuccessful comic. Although the ranking has been stable at 6th place, Eiji Nazuma's 2 comics have always been in the top 5. But it is much better than that of Ahomumanai. The funny comics of the Good Friends duo did not turn out as expected by the two. The ranking kept falling. Although it finally stabilized at around 13th place, this result made the Good Friends duo a little unacceptable. I don't know if it was affected by the serialization of Inuyasha. The popularity rankings of Fullmetal Alchemist and Higurashi also declined a bit. Fullmetal Alchemist is better. Although it did not continue to occupy the first place, it at least did not withdraw from the top 5, while Higurashi was more miserable. It has been hovering around the 10th place recently. The serialization of the Kaisha chapter of Higurashi has just started for a while, but the amount of information in it is too huge. Many readers who have just started to contact Higurashi cannot understand the content at all. It is normal for the ranking to drop, and Fullmetal Alchemist has also entered more daily life during this period, without fierce battles. Although the main line is occasionally mentioned, it is not involved too much. This makes many readers of Fullmetal Alchemist somewhat dissatisfied, and the ranking naturally begins to drop. As for Inuyasha, the serialization has just begun, and the dog monster has just completed the first formal battle, the battle with the female ghost Nifahai. Because of the foreshadowing problems before, Shimaru and Nagakura did not appear, which made many expectant readers feel a little resentful, and there are naturally many female readers who came for Shimaru, who is handsome. For these results, although Makoto Takahashi still doesn't care and still works hard to draw comics every day, Yoshida is a little worried. Apart from the human factors that time, Makoto Takahashi has been very smooth since the serialization of the comics, and this situation rarely occurs. Of course Yoshida also tried to persuade Takahashi Makoto to not feel pressured, but every time he was brushed off by Takahashi Makoto's indifferent attitude. As expected, the second-year middle school patients live in a different world. Yoshida looked at the white coat that was gradually disappearing over there, and his face showed a trace of relief. I was worried before that Gai-chan might be affected by the decline in the ranking of all comics this time, but now it seems, I thought too much. Although he said so, Yoshida still went to Takahashi Makoto from time to communicate. In addition to the daily work of collecting comic manuscripts, as the editor-in-chief, of course he had to provide some spiritual help when the cartoonist was in trouble. When Yoshida went to collect the comic manuscripts, he unexpectedly met an acquaintance, Mr. Chenban from Okawasha. You guys, have you changed your strategy this time? Takahashi Makoto looked at Chenban in front of him with a puzzled look. You guys who were holding on to DN tightly before, now you actually asked for the animation copyrights of Full Metal Alchemist and Higurashi. I don't know why you've been holding on to the animation copyrights of DN so tightly, Mr. Takahashi Makoto. Looking at the surprised Takahashi Makoto, Chenban showed a smug smile on his face. The unexpected attack really achieved good results. But you're right, this time we don't want DN, but Full Metal Alchemist and Higurashi. Both comics are still being serialized. There is no problem with Taiheshi's ability to produce animations, but if they are animated now. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was deep in thought, and put forward his own suggestions. Because comics are adapted into animations, or a lot of plots are deleted, animations can quickly catch up with comics. The animation copyright of Higurashi can be handed over to your company. Makoto Takahashi showed an expectant smile on his face. As for Steel, just like DN, now is not the time. Now everyone is ready to fight back at this stage. Hanging is almost finished, and its role as a reinforcement is almost complete. But for Hex Main Force Steel, it will take some time. Thank you very much, Mr. Takahashi Makoto. Chenban bowed and saluted. As for the contract, I will handle it as soon as possible. I won't disturb the conversation between you two. Farewell. After sending Chenban away, Takahashi Makoto looked at Yoshida, who was trying to become a quiet and beautiful man. He didn't say anything more, but handed over the manga manuscript he had prepared before to Yoshida. As usual, Yoshida sat on the sofa and read the manga manuscript, while Takahashi Makoto started drawing the manga. After Yoshida finished reading the manga manuscript, he would put forward some opinions and let Takahashi Makoto make modifications. The content of the first few chapters of Metal tells the story of Brother Edward, who deliberately put himself in danger in order to investigate the matter of artificial humans, transforming himself into a bait to attract the alchemist killer Scar, thereby achieving the purpose of eliciting artificial humans. Although the previous plot of steel refining was a little more strategic, in this chapter, all the foreshadowings laid before are fully unfolded. The whole chapter is full of fierce fighting. The prince of the new country, Lanfang, and the artificial, the battle between the National People's Congress president, the battle between the Edward brothers and Scar. The alchemist's battle was so exciting that Yoshida was so excited that he didn't even notice that Makoto Takahashi had stopped painting and came to him. The content of the sentence, before he finished speaking, Yoshida yelled because a ferocious face suddenly appeared in front of him. Yoshida was startled. When he looked carefully, he saw that the person wearing a white coat and a baboon-like mask on his face could be other than Makoto Takahashi. Yoshida, who was full of fear, roared loudly, "Chen, what are you doing? Don't scare people like this." "Huh? Chen. Hee, I am Naruko now." Takahashi Makoto laughed conspiratorially. "The Takahashi Makoto you mentioned has been swallowed by me and has now become a part of my body." After Yoshida was silent for a moment, he pulled off the mask on Takahashi Makoto's face. Under the mask, Takahashi Makoto was revealed with an unexpected look on his face. Yoshida didn't say anything, but snorted coldly and continued reading the manga, but his eyebrows were very unhappy. "How outrageous! How dare you ignore the devil of the evil party like this?" Makoto Takahashi showed an unhappy look on his face and stretched out his hand to snatch the manga manuscript. "This forbidden treasure is not something that mortals should touch. Please return it to this devil. Don't disturb me while I'm reading the comics, please be quiet." Yoshida raised the corners of his mouth slightly and said nonchalantly, "There are some problems with the comics, I'll tell you later." "Humph. There's a problem? That's because you haven't mastered the method of opening the noble phantasm yet." Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with contempt. human beings have such narrow vision. A mere mortal would judge the Demon King's noble phantasm arbitrarily. My beloved cat, don't think that you can resist this Demon King by turning on the stigmata and becoming an executor. Yoshida, who was completely immersed in Inuyasha, ignored Takahashi Makoto at all. In this chapter of Inuyasha, Sesshomaru makes a strong appearance. Sesshomaru started a battle with his younger brother Inuyasha in order to seize the demon sword Tetsuyasha left behind by his father, Inu Admiral. Different from the previous battle scenes, Inuyasha was completely suppressed. Even for his twin brother, Sesshomaru had no mercy and showed the nature of the monster to the fullest. Especially in the middle of the journey, Sesshomaru turned into a huge dog monster, from a graceful noble boy to a ferocious monster. This strong contrast made Yoshida feel a strong shock. After all, when Sesshomaru appeared in the first episode, he was elegant and noble. However, in this episode, he turned into a ferocious monster, cruel, and terrifying. My beloved cat, you asked for this. Just when Yoshida was still sighing at Sesshomaru's shocking transformation, Takahashi Makoto's gloomy voice rang out, "Since you love this Demon King's questioning, if you ignore it, you will fall into eternal sleep like this world. This is the fate of ignoring the Demon King." Before Yoshida could react, he heard a crackling sound. He looked up and saw Makoto Takahashi tripping over the corner of the table. The mess on the floor should be evidence, right? Sorry, I will be stuck in a single update mode recently. A certain cat injured his hand when hanging the curtains today. It is difficult to type. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 119. During the serialization of Rebellion, Euphemia's death touched the nerves of many readers. However, for Phoenix Academy Murderer, who was not a very famous cartoonist at the time, the only readers who paid attention were to call him. Just complain to the editorial office. Because there was not much overreaction, the storm quickly subsided, so Makoto Takahashi did not pay too much attention to this matter. However, for the Rebellion broadcast last week and this week, out of respect for the original comics, Dehesha did not modify the plot when making the animation, so that Euphemia, an angel who symbolizes purity and kindness, became the bloody princess, the murderous princess. In order to eliminate the pure princesses of the two countries, he accidentally tore the last bond between the two countries with his own hands. Because Lelich's ability was out of control, Euphemia became the killing princess and massacred a large number of innocent civilians. In the end, she was shot dead by Lelich himself in front of the guardian knight Suzaku. Let's not comment on whether Euphemia's ideal is too naive, but it cannot be denied that when Euphemia proposed that idea again, what she had in her heart was kindness that could not be rebuked. Although there are mixed opinions about this ideal, it must be said that among the many characters created in Rebellion, Euphemia is one of the few who is close to perfection. She is kind, upright, and ignorant of the world. Although her behavior and thoughts are a bit too naive, she was born in the Britannian royal family and has not been contaminated by the ugliness of the Britannian royal family. However, such a seemingly perfect person actually also implies that life has come to an end. But the death of Euphemia in the animation is different from the situation in the manga. After the accumulation of popularity during this period, especially the fact that 3 comics were serialized in Shonen Jump at the same time, Hohoin Kumo became a popular cartoonist. Although readers have different preferences, although they may not necessarily like comics by the same author, they will at least pay attention to some. As the first animated comic of the Phoenix Academy, the popularity of Rebellion can be imagined. So the question about Euphemia's death becomes complicated. It's very depressing, very sad, very angry. In short, many viewers have a lot of resentment after watching Rebellion in the past 2 weeks. Although newspapers and media did not pay too much attention to this issue, there was already a lot of noise on the internet. It was just a small-scale discussion at the beginning, and then as the number of people discussing it increased, a debate arose, and then the war spread. Most of the viewers could not accept the fact that Yuffie died, and even posted a message asking the Phoenix Academy for the murder. Topics such as changing the content of comics and resurrecting Euphemia have also been on the top several times. Of course, many people posted the follow-up comics of Rebellion R2 on the internet, and then the war continued to expand. Because of the plot of Rebellion, the debate on the internet has escalated into a war. Because the cartoonist of Hohoin Kuma could not be found, the comic Shonen Jump was serialized, and Taigasa, who produced the animation, was innocently shot, and was declared to be the trigger of the war, becoming the target of crusade by Rebellion fans. Although they have dealt with similar situations before, the huge momentum this time still overwhelmed Yorong Society and Daihi Society. Both sides sent capable officers to Takahashi Makoto at the same time, hoping that the original author of the comic would come out with a reasonable explanation to calm the anger of Rebellion fans. Of course, the main purpose is to appease Takahashi Makoto. Neither party wants Takahashi Makoto to fall into a trough because of these things and affect his enthusiasm for creating comics. His nature is obviously full of violence and destructive instincts, but he wants to praise the hypocritical piece. Because he cannot accept the cruel reality, he tries to escape from life. Modify the plot of the animation? Change the ending of the manga. Makoto Takahashi's face showed with a disdainful smile. He looked down at the two people sitting on the sofa. There is nothing wrong with longing for perfection, but imposing this will on others is such a selfish approach. Human beings are indeed the worst species, without one. Chen, although I really want to say that you did a good job in your philosophy course. Yoshida looked at the mocking look on Makoto Takahashi's face, and became a little angry. How long has it been since he still mocked human beings? Speak for yourself. Not human? As humans, don't you ever feel a little bit ashamed? Makoto Takahashi shook his white coat, with a look of pity on his face. It's really pathetic for ants like humans to be unable to see through their own weaknesses. It exists. Although what you said makes sense, but now. Chen sighed, looking at Makoto Takahashi's state. He couldn't expect too much. Let's find a way to solve this problem first. Don't order me, common people, Makoto Takahashi coldly replied to Chen Ben. Then he covered his chest and looked at the sky in the distance with a painful expression. World, you are really pitiful. You have been abused by such ugly creatures like humans. Defiled, your body and mind have sunk into the abyss. Why do you still exist? Destroy. Destroy. Let the species called humanity disappear into the long river of history. Yoshida and Chen Ben looked at Makoto Takahashi, who was in a state of heartache and delusion, and looked at each other, feeling an emotion called regret in their hearts at the same time. At this time, taking Takahashi Makoto to explain something is completely seeking death. The situation has already started to get a little out of control. If this Chuyonibu is allowed to come on stage and ridicule wantonly, the result, he will definitely die. Although he really wanted to refuse Makoto Takahashi's help, Makoto Takahashi turned on the plug-in and forcefully joined the explanation team, becoming the leader of the team and gaining the authority of the captain. On the road, Yoshida and Chen Ben kept trying to instill in Takahashi Makoto the world of the outside world, but Takahashi Makoto, who was fully in his secondary state, was completely exempted from the educational skills that were called auxiliary but were actually weakened. Oh! Have a large number of believers gathered already? My beloved cat, I have to say that you did a good job this time. Makoto Takahashi looked at the large number of people in the hall. His face became excited. She turned rosy and said, "Is this time finally here? Ha 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 ha, the second stage of Super Saiyan transformation, the Demon King has arrived, let's go." I suddenly had a premonition that this would be the worst decision in our lives. Looking at Makoto Takahashi, who was wearing a white coat, Yoshida covered his eyes and did not dare to continue looking. Although he had not mastered the second method, he still there is no magic eye to peer into the parallel world, but Yoshida's intuition has already seen the so-called ending. Same feeling, Chenben also sighed helplessly and quietly agreed with Yoshida's remarks. Just as the fans of Rebellion were making noise, a one-eyed man wearing a white coat with the words Demon King written on the back walked out step by step. Naturally, someone in the crowd recognized that this was the cartoonist Phoenix Inferno. The venue, which had been noisy just now, gradually became quiet. Many people had complex expressions on their faces, staring at the one-eyed boy. Phoenix Academy teacher, Her Highness Euphemia cannot die. Please modify this plot. Just when Makoto Takahashi was trying to dominate the audience through Chuji aura pressure, a voice representing the vast number of Rebellion fans rang loudly and resonated with everyone. Yes, yes, the mooncake's inherent barrier onlookers activates. Such a kind-hearted Princess Euphemia became a murderous princess because of Lelich's joke. When I saw this, I started to feel depressed. But when I saw the next episode, Euphemia, Your Highness Mia is really dead. We cannot accept this outcome. Her Royal Highness, such a kind-hearted and pure princess, clearly wanted to resolve the conflict between the two countries, but she ended up becoming the trigger of the war and died in infamy. Such a result is really. Yoshida, who was watching from the side, and Makoto Takahashi, who looked more and more uncomfortable, began to feel worried and worried. Although when a cartoonist encounters this situation, it means that the cartoonist's cartoons have gathered high popularity, but also because of the high popularity, they also bear the so-called pressure. Yoshida is a little worried now, worried that Takahashi Makoto will be depressed because of this incident. However, after Yoshida thought about what happened before, he was a little worried that Takahashi Makoto would do something outrageous. You must know that Yoshida had a brief exchange with Chenben before going to Takahashi Makoto's house. The thoughts and behaviors are different from ordinary people, and it is extremely easy to fall into a delusional self-world. This is the common understanding between the two of them about Takahashi Makoto. Tisk, 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 this resentment is really delicious. Makoto Takahashi licked his tongue and laughed conspiratorially. Is this the resentment you have gathered together? After all, it is only to this extent. You are completely vulnerable. The reason why you have resentment, in the final analysis, it is entirely because of not having enough love. Makoto Takahashi's mid-second speech made the scene fall into a dead silence. He complained about delicious food and so on. This kind of second-grade speech does not need to be ignored, but the love mentioned by Makoto Takahashi at the end is not enough. This is something that many people can't get enough of. Convinced. Many people have opened their mouths to refute, but Makoto Takahashi seemed to have anticipated this situation, with a disdainful smile on his face. Don't try to refute His Majesty the Demon King. The expression on Takahashi Makoto's face gradually became serious. I have noticed your love for comics, but it is not enough. It is not enough at all. Because of the death of the character, resentment arises. Do you even want to give up? Humph. What a lie. It's all because you don't have deep love. I love every character constructed with heart and soul. A certain plagiarism maniac showed no guilt at all, but looked enthusiastic. The fact that the character can affect your mood means that the character is successful. But what you are doing now is blaspheming the character itself. The so-called beauty of human beings comes entirely from the love in the heart. But is the so-called love just accepting the positive side of light and resisting the negative existence of darkness? Euphemia's love cannot accept Yuffie's death, so it gathers here. I can't feel the love in your hearts, but taste the delicacy of endless resentment. Your love. Takahashi Cheng raised his white coat and turned around to leave. At the same time, He mocked mercilessly, extremely superficial. As for what fans of Rebellion would think, Makoto Takahashi completely ignored them. He walked past Yoshida and Ben Chen, who looked dull with a sneer, and Makoto Takahashi laughed strangely. "Have you seen it? This move is the exclusive secret of Phoenix Academy's fierceness, called Baptism of Love." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Email. Chapter 120. You can't accept Euphemia's death because you don't love her deeply enough. Takahashi Makoto's previous explanation of the second place completely became famous on the internet. Many readers, while laughing and reprinting the whole story, claimed that they did not love deeply enough. So when many people talk about something that is unacceptable, they always end up jokingly with "because I don't love deeply enough." Although this approach seems to be more ridicule than praise, it must be said that the spread of such a spoof has become an excellent opportunity for Rebellion to expand its claims. After many people saw that the whole story was due to the death of a character, they continued to explore. From the role of Euphemia to Rebellion, curiosity was aroused again and again, and at the same time, it also made more people are paying attention to Rebellion. The next week's Rebellion is very confusing for many fans. Although the comic has come out, many people don't mind a second experience compared to the animation with dual picture and sound. Although many people are a little disappointed that Takahashi Makoto did not modify the plot, their love for Rebellion is sincere. Euphemia's death made Lelouch completely embark on the path of Shura. Now that you have made your choice, go on without hesitation, carry everything on your back, and go on without stopping. This is what Lelouch does. Changing from the Black Prince to the Demon King is the most important step. Now that you have killed Euphemia with your own hands, let's abandon all emotions and become the real Demon King. Maximize the benefits of Euphemia's death and become an opportunity for the Black Knight's resistance, kicking off the war. Lelouch's realization moved many people. After watching this episode of animation, many people asked themselves, could they be able to bear this sin? Killing the first love you once had, carrying this pain and moving on, this firm heart cannot be shaken, this persistence of moving forward makes people admire you. Although this kind of Lelouch looks too cold, it is precisely because of this that he deserves to be called a king. Of course, many people shed tears over the relationship between Suzaku and Euphemia. One is the innocent princess, and the other is a clumsy and gentle knight. The gentle and innocent smile of the princess has disappeared, and the knight who lost the object of his protection has also lost his tenderness and become distorted by anger. The loss of his beloved has also made his already numb heart total death. Euphemia's death, the lonely fate of the king, the knight whose faith collapsed, childhood friends who had to fall into life and death hostility, the existence of this episode has attracted a lot of hatred, making everyone who has watched it feel extremely depressed. Especially someone with a bad taste even added a sentence at the beginning of "This will be a very healing episode of animation," which made many viewers who thought that Euphemia was not really dead were once again tragically tricked. Kill. Healing. Chen Ben looked at the rising ratings, his lips twitching wildly. It's really healing. After what happened, the upper echelons of Daihi society had doubts about this animation, because considering the social impact, Rebellion has been included in the list of being cut in half. But now looking at the rising ratings, Chen Ben, who was a little worried about the animation being cut in half, has been completely cured, and he has been resurrected in full condition. It's so unbelievable. After receiving the news from Chen Ben, Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi in disbelief. After listening to your explanation that day, I was already convinced that your manga would be cut in half. I was mentally prepared, but I never expected that instead of declining, my popularity would rise to the next level. This is unscientific. Huh. Unscientific. My beloved cat, it seems you haven't realized it yet. Makoto Takahashi put his hands on his hips and laughed wildly. The superfusion of his true self was born. It's not because of the halo of the protagonist, the world contract, the influence of the heart, the power of destiny, the power of harmony in the universe, but, that's right, this is the choice of Steins Gate. Ha 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 ha. Ha. It's just a coincidence. The arrogant and charming Yoshida didn't believe Takahashi Makoto's words at all. Before, Yoshida was worried that Makoto Takahashi would affect the creation of comics because of this incident, but now it seems that he really thought too much. By chance, after Makoto Takahashi heard this word, an inexplicable smile appeared on his face, and Yoshida triggered the hidden dialogue. Ignoring the option to conquer Yoshida by increasing his favorability, Makoto Takahashi still made the right choice for the second grade based on the fate of Steins Gate. For the different dimensional Demon King Phoenix Academy Jigen, there are no accidents in this world, only necessity. Demon King of different dimensions. Yoshida was completely unable to complain about this title, and looked at Makoto Takahashi with confusion on his face. Also, Chen, what is your so-called choice of Steins Gate? Exchange of equal value. If you want to know. Makoto Takahashi looked at Yoshida with a smile. My beloved cat, the suicide note, have you already written it? While fans of Rebellion are still jumping into pits one after another, fans of Higurashi are also feeling the surprise attack plan from the fierce Demon King of the Phoenix Academy. Higurashi is a work that only looks at the first few chapters and has no idea of its meaning. I can only see the repetition of infinite killings and the collapse and death of the characters after their blackening. It seems that this rhythm has continued from the beginning of the serialization to the present. Although many readers have been hoping for an explanation from Phoenix Academy murderer, a certain middle-class cartoonist has never given a suitable explanation. And with the serialization of the All Kills chapter, the foreshadowing that had been laid before began to unfold bit by bit. The previous chapters were just stories about parallel worlds, and as the witness and key point of the story, it was the little Lolita Gus who always ended with various cute expressions. Many people finally felt the chilling story background of the entire Hansekata after seeing the recent series of All Killings chapters. Reincarnated again and again, repeating tragic fate, constantly failing, but also constantly trying to resist. Although some readers have complained that many comics are a bit watery. Although they are memories of Rika, they actually look like the comics that serialized those chapters before, but none of this is important anymore. With the gradual unfolding of the killing chapter, Higurashi, which has always been suspected of not being suitable for Shonen Jump, has received good reviews. This unfolds, is that second-grade cartoonist really a human being? Yang Wei is one of the earliest die-hard fans of Hansekata and has been following Hansekata. Recently, with the unfolding of the All Kills chapter, Yang Wei has gradually begun to watch Hansekata. Here comes the main line of the whole story. However, Yang Wei still couldn't understand Takahashi Makoto's thoughts. That's right, I spent several chapters telling several different stories before, but now it seems that it is completely foreshadowing for the following chapters. Monster. That one in the middle Bing is definitely a monster. In the All Kills chapter, Liwa fell into confusion. Because of repeated failures and setbacks, Liwa felt hesitant and confused about resisting fate. In the game store, the same events happened again and again, and the time became tight after rebirth, making Liwa fall into a state of irritability. However, as the male protagonist, Kiyaki-san forcibly reversed his fate. First, he changed the fate in the game store, and then, without prompting, reversed the fate of the group being wiped out by sending the wrong doll. All of these actions made the onlookers watch. Liwa was inspired by the whole incident and strengthened her determination to fight against fate. I didn't expect it at all. After Yang Wei finished reading this issue of Hansekata, he put down the comic book and let out a long sigh. Previously, he was a little dissatisfied with the serialization of Higurashi by Makoto Takahashi, because this cycle of death and resurrection of important characters may seem a bit novel at the first time, but after a long time, he began to suffer from aesthetic fatigue, and the whole. Although the characters in the stories are the same, they seem completely unrelated. To be honest, Yang Wei has been a little disappointed with Han Cicada recently. Die-hard loyalty does not mean being brainless. The previous Han Cicada has never pointed out the theme. In addition, in each chapter, important characters will enter the black and collapse. Damn, even a diehard like Yang Wei is a little confused as to how Makoto Takahashi will bring these plots back. As soon as the Everyone Killed chapter came out, everyone on the board was killed. Seeing Rika's efforts to fight against fate, and seeing Kiyaki breaking some of his original fates with a smile, Yang Wei unknowingly began to look forward to it again. This time, Pear Blossom will definitely be able to defeat fate, right? Looking at the end of this comic, Liwa once again ignited her fighting spirit to fight against fate. For some reason, Yang Wei suddenly felt a little moved and began to support Liwa, this cute and sinister little loli. This is really... Yoshida looked at the reader survey paper in his hand. After a brief surprise, the smile on his face could no longer be suppressed. The work that I thought would be cut in half has actually started to reverse now. Ha ha ha, is this what is called good things coming in pairs? Seeing the proud smile that couldn't be concealed on Yoshida's face, several editors on the side sighed a little. Although they had watched part of Han Cicada in advance, they did not expect that the perfected Han Cicada would actually carry out such a foul reversal. Minato looked at the manga manuscript in his hand and looked a little embarrassed. Previously, this chubby editor encouraged the duo of Ajumu to work hard to surpass Higurashi. However, after watching Higurashi go directly to the second place, Minotaur suddenly I felt that there seemed to be something wrong with my vision. Second, Makoto Takahashi was not happy when he heard Yoshida's good news. Instead, he accused Yoshida righteously, "Does it just mean that you are so arrogant because of the second place? Because this little thing is you are so complacent, my beloved cat, is this all you can do? It's so sweet. It's already good that it's hard to get second place." Yoshida was a little dissatisfied with Takahashi Makoto's accusation, with a sinister smile on his face. "If you want to complain about me, just try your best to get first place." "But I think to get first place, hee. There shouldn't be that option in Steins Gate, right?" Bang, Makoto Takahashi snorted coldly, "The east wind that can burn Red Cliff has arrived, and now is the time to dominate the world. My beloved cat, if you are too arrogant and underestimate the enemy, I will not hesitate to kill you. Give it up. Arrogance is the original sin. Underestimating the enemy is a capital crime. What's the point of keeping you? Hey. Aiken, no, Your Majesty the Demon King. Ha 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 ha.